I was just finishing my morning shift at the small roadside diner when they walked in, two little kids, no older than 7 or 8. Their clothes were dirty, too big for them, and their eyes carried the kind of emptiness that made my heart ache. They slid into a corner booth without a word. No adult with them. Just silence, broken only by the loud gurgling of the boy's stomach. I glanced over at the manager, Mr. Lawson, who was already frowning. "They better not be loitering," he muttered. I ignored him. Something told me these two weren't out causing trouble, they were just hungry. I grabbed 2 plates and filled them with scrambled eggs, toast, and some bacon from my own staff meal. "On me," I said softly, setting it down in front of them. The girl hesitated. "We don't have money." I knelt beside her and smiled. "You don't need money today. Just eat." They looked at each other like they hadn't heard kindness in months. I didn't ask questions. Didn't press. I just made sure they ate. And after they were done, I slipped them some extra biscuits in a paper bag for later. They didn't say goodbye when they left. But I'd remember their faces for the rest of my life. Days passed. Then weeks. I never saw those kids again. Every once in a while, I'd wonder about them, where they went, if they were okay, if anyone ever took them in. But life had its way of sweeping things along. The diner stayed the same, creaky stools, overcooked eggs, regulars with heavy stories. I kept working, kept scraping by. No big dreams, no big breaks. Just tips and tired feet. Sometimes, late at night when I closed up, I'd sit in that same booth they once occupied and leave a plate there. Silly, I know. But I couldn't help it. Something about those kids had left a mark deeper than I could explain. 20 years flew by. No marriage. No kids of my own. Just me, my little house on the edge of town, and a lot of quiet. Until one summer morning. I was watering my porch plants when the roar hit me, loud, deep, thundering from above. I looked up, shielding my eyes from the sun. A helicopter. Coming closer. Fast. I stood frozen as it descended toward the clearing beside my house, a place no aircraft had ever been. And then. It landed. The wind from the blades whipped through my apron, knocking my flower pots over. And just when I thought it couldn't get any stranger, the doors opened. 2 people stepped out. And my heart stopped. The man was tall, dressed in a sharp suit that probably cost more than my car. The woman beside him wore a sleek white blazer and carried herself like she owned the sky. But it wasn't the clothes. It was the eyes. Those same haunted eyes, only now, they held fire instead of fear. The man stepped forward first. "Excuse me, are you Miss Lila?" I nodded slowly. "Yes, can I help you?" He smiled, and something flickered in his expression. "You already did. 20 years ago." My knees went weak. It couldn't be. "You fed us," the woman said softly, tears already slipping down her cheek. "We were starving. Lost. You didn't ask questions. You saved us." My hand flew to my mouth. "Ellie?" I whispered. "Anne? Jonah?" They both nodded. "I thought about you every day," Jonah said. That moment changed everything. I didn't do anything, I managed. It was just a meal. "No," Ellie said. It was hope. I looked at them, polished, powerful, standing before me like something out of a dream. They walked closer. "We've been looking for you for years," Jonah said. "Why?" I asked, still shaking. "Because we made a promise," Ellie said, taking my hands. "That if we ever made it out, we'd come back." Jonah smiled. "And we didn't come empty-handed." That's when the side door of the helicopter opened again. And what I saw made me drop to my knees. A man in a black suit stepped out, holding a silver briefcase. Behind him, another emerged, holding what looked like a set of blueprints. My heart pounded. What is this? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Jonah helped me to my feet. Lila, we didn't just want to say thank you. We wanted to change your life, the way you changed ours. Ellie nodded. We're not just successful now. Jonah runs a tech company that builds infrastructure in developing areas. I'm in humanitarian law. But everything started that day in the diner. The man with the briefcase stepped forward and opened it. Inside were stacks of documents, glossy and stamped. A deed, Jonah explained. To a new property, one we had built in your name. Fully furnished, completely yours. I blinked, stunned. A property? I echoed. 10 acres, custom-built farmhouse, gardens, and a guest house. All solar-powered, with a full-time staff, if you want one. I tried to speak. I couldn't. My throat was too tight. And this, Ellie added, pointing to another folder, is a trust. Enough to make sure you never have to work another day, unless you want to. But I'm just a waitress, I whispered. I didn't earn this, Jonah placed his hand on my shoulder. You gave us dignity when we had none. You didn't know us. You didn't owe us. But you chose kindness. That changed everything. Ellie smiled through tears. So now, it's our turn. Tears spilled down my cheeks, and I covered my mouth again. My knees were trembling, but not from fear. From disbelief. I thought that little act of compassion had vanished into the past. Turns out, it was just waiting to come home. The neighbors began to gather as the news spread. A helicopter landing in a sleepy, quiet town tends to stir things up. But none of them had any idea what was happening on my front lawn. Jonah and Ellie didn't just come to drop off gifts. They stayed. They sat with me on my porch, drinking iced tea and laughing like we were old friends. And in many ways, we were, bonded not by time, but by a moment that changed the course of 3 lives. They told me everything. How after I fed them, a kind trucker found them hitchhiking downstate and brought them to a shelter that eventually helped place them in foster care. How Jonah, despite moving through 3 different homes, held onto a photo he'd drawn of the diner, and me, smiling over a plate of eggs. How Ellie wrote a scholarship essay about the kindness of a stranger, and that essay got her into law school. I've spoken at the UN, Miss Lila, she said, chuckling. But this? Being back here. This means more. Jonah leaned back, looking out at the field. You were the first person who looked at us and didn't see a problem. You saw 2 hungry kids and treated us like we mattered. You did matter, I said, blinking back fresh tears. Ellie reached for my hand. And now, you matter to the world too. We made sure of it. That's when Jonah's phone buzzed. He stepped aside, answered it, then returned with a grin. Your ride's here, he said. My ride? Suddenly, a sleek black SUV rolled up the gravel drive. We've got a surprise, Ellie said. You're coming with us, just for a week. No arguments. Pack a small bag. But I have work, and, Jonah raised an eyebrow. We already spoke to Mr. Lawson. He says if you don't go, he'll fire you himself. I laughed, a loud, giddy, disbelieving laugh. I hadn't felt that kind of joy in years. I didn't know where we were going. I didn't care. All I knew was, kindness had come full circle. The SUV ride felt surreal. Like I was watching someone else's life happen from the passenger seat. Jonah sat beside me, casually taking calls on his earpiece, while Ellie scrolled through her tablet, coordinating what she called a soft launch for something she wouldn't let me peek at yet. You'll see, she winked. We drove for hours, through winding hills and sunlit fields, until we finally pulled up to an iron gate with security cameras and a plaque that read, The Haven Project. The gates opened slowly. What lay beyond took my breath away. It wasn't just a house, it was a sanctuary. Acres of beautifully designed cabins, a glass education center, a greenhouse, and a small lake surrounded by benches and walking paths. "What is this place?" I asked. Jonah turned to me, smiling like a proud son. "This is what we built, Lila. For kids just like we were." Ellie added, "It's a home. A school. A place where no one goes hungry, where every kid gets therapy, support, education, and most importantly, hope." Tears stung my eyes again. "And you're part of it," Ellie said. "In fact, come with me." She led me down a gravel path to a beautiful wooden building at the edge of the lake. Inside was a large common room, filled with books, art, and quiet music playing. On one wall, framed in glass, was a large black and white photo of me. It was taken at the diner, probably from one of those old security cams I never paid attention to. I was setting a plate down in front of two small children. Below the photo was a brass plaque. It read, "To the woman who fed us without asking questions, because of you, we learned what love looks like." Dedicated in honor of Lila. James the First gasped. My hands shook. "This is our heart, Lila," Ellie whispered. "And it beats because of you." I stood there, overwhelmed. Humbled. Speechless. 20 years ago, I gave 2 orphans a meal. Now, they were feeding the world. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because the guest suite wasn't comfortable, it was the most luxurious place I'd ever stayed. No, I couldn't sleep because my heart was too full. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, trying to process how one moment of kindness had come back to me like a tidal wave. Just before dawn, I stepped out onto the balcony. The lake shimmered in the moonlight. I could see silhouettes of early staff setting up breakfast stations near the main building. It was peaceful, purposeful. And then I heard footsteps behind me. Ellie. She handed me a steaming mug of coffee. "Thought you might be up." I took it with a grateful smile. "You were right." She leaned on the railing beside me. "We've been planning this moment for years. Not just to thank you, but to invite you in. You see, we didn't build all of this just to make ourselves feel better," she said, her voice soft. "We wanted to build it with you. Because the truth is, this place isn't about us. It started with you." I shook my head. "I wouldn't know the first thing about running a foundation." Ellie turned to me, eyes full of quiet fire. "But you do know how to see people. You know what it means to notice someone who's invisible. That's more valuable than a dozen degrees." Jonah joined us, still tying his watch on. "We want you to be part of the leadership board," he said. "Advisor. Mentor. Heart of the project. We'll do the logistics, you just keep doing what you've always done." "Which is what?" "Care," he said simply. I blinked at them, stunned. "You're serious?" "As a second chance," Ellie said. And for the first time in a long time, I believed it. The next few days felt like a dream I didn't want to wake up from. They gave me a full tour of the Haven project, classrooms filled with laughter, gardens where children grew their own food, therapy rooms filled with light and color, and art studios where pain was turned into beauty. I met the staff. Teachers, counselors, volunteers, all of them handpicked by Ellie and Jonah, all of them passionate about one thing, healing forgotten kids. And everywhere I went, someone would whisper, "That's her. That's Miss Lila." At first, it embarrassed me. I didn't feel like I deserved any of it. I wasn't rich, or educated, or powerful. I was just a waitress who once did what anyone with a heart should do. But Ellie kept reminding me, that's exactly why it mattered. One evening, after dinner, they held a gathering in the main hall. Every child at the Haven came, sitting cross-legged on pillows, waiting. Ellie walked to the front and picked up a mic. "I want you all to meet the woman who showed us what it means to be seen," she said. "She didn't have to feed us. She didn't even ask our names. But she gave us more than food. She gave us the first piece of hope we ever knew." She turned to me. "Miss Lila, would you say a few words?" My hands shook as I took the mic. I looked out at those small faces, tired eyes, brave smiles, and my voice trembled as I began. "I don't know what to say, except, I'm so proud of all of you. And if anyone's ever made you feel like you're not enough, they're wrong. You are. You always were." The kids clapped. Some stood up and hugged me. One little girl whispered, "Can you be my grandma?" I broke down right there. It was the most honest, beautiful moment of my life. That night, something inside me shifted. I realized I had spent so many years thinking I was just a waitress, just a woman who lived alone, scraping by, fading into the background. But now, I understood. I wasn't just anything. I was part of a story that stretched far beyond that little diner. A story that had planted seeds in 2 broken hearts and had now bloomed into something bigger than I ever imagined. The next morning, Jonah took me aside and showed me the final surprise. He led me to a small, quiet trail near the edge of the property. There, tucked under a canopy of trees, was a newly built cottage, simple, elegant, and filled with light. "This is yours," he said. I stared, stunned. "You already gave me a house." He shook his head with a smile. "That other one? That's yours to retire in one day, if you want peace and quiet. But this one? This one's here, right now. So you can be close. With us. With the kids." My throat tightened. "I can't take this." "You already did," Ellie said, appearing behind him. "The day you fed us. This is just us catching up." I stepped inside. It smelled like fresh pine and lemon polish. The shelves were filled with books. The walls decorated with photos, not of me, but of smiling kids, planting trees, playing in fields, painting murals. Living. My life had meant something. It had built something. And for the first time in 2 decades, I didn't feel like I was looking back at my best years. I felt like they were just beginning. That a month later, I officially moved into the cottage by the trees. Every morning, I'd wake up to the sound of laughter drifting across the lake, and every night I'd fall asleep knowing that somewhere nearby, another child was being given the second chance Jonah and Ellie once received. I became more than a symbol. I became family. I started helping with meals again, not because I had to, but because it brought me joy. I'd sit with the kids during lunch, tell stories, listen to theirs. Some of them called me Miss Lila, some Grandma, some just hugged me tight without saying a word. I loved them all. One afternoon, during a small ceremony on the lawn, Ellie announced that the new mentoring program would be named the Lila Initiative. "Because one small act of kindness can echo for generations," she said. That night, as the sun set in fiery gold behind the trees, Jonah and Ellie sat beside me on the porch swing. "We've got one more surprise," Jonah said, grinning. He pulled out a folded piece of paper, a plane ticket. "To where?" I asked. "Wherever you want," Ellie said. "You've given so much of your life to others. Now it's time for an adventure. You pick the place. We'll handle everything." I stared at the ticket, and then at them. "You really don't owe me anything," I whispered. "We know," Jonah said. "But we owe ourselves the chance to give back, the way you did. The way the world needs more of." And just like that, I finally let myself believe it. That kindness was never wasted. That what we do, even when no one's looking, can come back in ways we can't imagine. Because I once fed 2 hungry orphans with nothing but a warm plate and a soft smile. And 20 years later, a helicopter landed at my home, and brought me a new life. Months passed, and the Haven project continued to flourish. I settled into a rhythm, mentoring the staff, helping new kids adjust, even starting a weekly story circle where I shared tales from my years at the diner. The kids loved it. They'd sit cross-legged around me, wide-eyed, hanging on every word as if I were telling fairy tales. But one day, something happened that reminded me just how far the story had come full circle. A boy named Marcus, no older than 8, came into the kitchen while I was slicing apples. He hesitated, watching me from the doorway. "You hungry, sweetheart?" I asked. He nodded slowly. "But I don't got any money." I paused. The words hit me like a ghost from the past. I smiled. "You don't need money today," I said gently, sliding a bowl of apples and peanut butter across the counter. "Just eat." He looked at me like he couldn't believe it. Like kindness was still something new. And in that moment, I saw my younger self. Not the waitress, the woman who believed she was small and invisible. But the woman who made a choice that kept echoing through time. Later that night, I wrote in my journal, something I'd picked up again, thanks to Ellie's encouragement. My final words for the day: it doesn't take $1 million to change someone's life. Just one moment. One plate. One yes when the world says no. I was never just a waitress. I was the start of someone else's miracle. And with that, I closed the book and smiled. The kids were safe. The legacy would live on. And I, finally, was home. It had been nearly a year since the helicopter landed in my yard. Since then, my world had bloomed in ways I never thought possible. Not just because of the money or the beautiful cottage or even the trips Ellie and Jonah sent me on, but because of what I now saw every single day: lives being changed, the same way theirs had been. I was no longer just a part of the Haven project, I was its foundation. Every child that came through those gates knew my name. Not because I was some celebrity or success story, but because I had become something more powerful, a reminder that one person, just one, can make all the difference. One rainy evening, we held a celebration at the Lake Pavilion. Jonah had just secured a new international grant, and Ellie announced a partnership with 3 more shelters across the country. Then she handed me a small velvet box. I opened it slowly. Inside was a delicate silver necklace, a single charm in the shape of a plate. No diamonds. No gold. Just a plate. Ellie leaned close. Because that plate fed more than 2 hungry kids, Lila. It fed a future. Tears rolled down my cheeks as I clasped it around my neck. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like someone who had just helped. I felt like someone who had changed the world, one act of kindness at a time.